Welcome to the epicenter of sports and entertainment. This is the Root Dog Show. Now, here's your host, Rudy Reyes.
Welcome to the Rude Dog Show. Good afternoon, everyone. For those, it is still morning, but most of us receive the afternoon very well. Speaking of receiving things, I have a gentleman that you should know. If you don't know who he is, maybe some resemblance there somewhere. Well, anyway, this gentleman has done so many things, continues to do great things, and is always on the move. He's always doing something great, whether it's for his immediate family or for those that don't even know who he is. But we're going to talk about all of that and then some, including some sports in addition to this show today. This is the RudeDogShow.com. I am your host, Rudy Reyes. And of course, it is the Nathan Osmond show. It could be, depends on what theater you're at.
Well, this is your show, brother.
Venue you're at.
This is your show. I'm honored to be on it, Rudy.
Thanks, Nathan. I appreciate it. Thanks for joining me as well as everybody else who's watching right now. You have continually done a variety of things. It's almost hard to pinpoint where to start or where to end because you're, again, all over the place doing so many different things.
Mm-hmm.
And you're really big into the country music scene. You've had numerous number one hit singles, which is fabulous. And then you've been on stage with people would be envious of this when I mentioned Carrie Underwood or Trace Atkins, Chris Young, some people that I'm even familiar with, and I don't mean personally, but I mean to the extent of listening to some of their music. Carrie Underwood does the opener for NBC for sports and all that stuff. Yep. Martina McBride has her own story in country music as well. Of course, Alabama's been around forever in 10 days. Lone Star Montgomery Gentry, who I actually have a few songs in my music library.
Nice. I'm impressed.
As well. I do listen a little country. I do have some folks back yonder. You wouldn't know what me, but yeah, they're back there somewhere. Anyway, so you've done cruises on Royal Caribbean, which
we love the headline Royal Caribbean.
Yeah, you're the headliner there. How did you get into it? I mean, what was your starting point? And I know you have family lineage with a name like Osmond, but what did you want to do to help kind of solidify your position, not just with that name, but within country music all to itself?
Well, I didn't start off country. In fact, I'm a country convert, and I thank guys like Garth Brooks, Colin Ray, Vince Gill, John Michael Montgomery for converting me in the 90s to country music. But I grew up obviously around the Donnie and Marie shows. I used to mimic my father and uncles. My father's Alan Osmond, the oldest of the original Osmond brothers. So I was raised around it. And we used to watch the reruns and the Andy Williams shows and started singing their hits. But in two-part harmony, my father was like, who taught him that? We just had an ear for it. Anyway, so he started teaching the third and fourth parts. We grew up singing barbershop harmony. And Bob Hope put me on his Christmas special when I was in 1986 with my brothers, the Osmond Boys. Anyways, after that, Curb Records signed us on their labels. We did a lot of pop music. We had 3 songs in the top 40 over in the UK. We used to tour with New Kids on the Block, Color Me Bad, Salt and Pepper, Naughty by Nature, Extreme, all those 90s bands. Wow. And that was a lot of fun, but then my uncle bought a theater out in Missouri, and we went out to, the Ozarks in Branson and did 2 shows every day but Sundays. And it was a lot of fun. It wasn't much of a career move for us, but it kept us singing and it introduced us to new genres. That's where I got introduced to country music. That's where I started meeting a lot of these stars that would come to town and started really listening to their tunes. And I literally became a country convert and never thought I would go after it as a solo artist until after I got married in 2002. I was doing a production of Annie, Get Your Gun. I'd just gotten back off the road from doing 2 years of Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. So I've done musicals as well. But during the rehearsals of Annie, Get Your Gun, I come out in this cowboy outfit. And my new bride, Sarah, she sees me in these chaps and this cowboy hat and this vest. She's like, "You're supposed to sing country." I'm like, "What?" She says, listen to all the songs you're writing. They're very crossover. You got the look. I think you can pull this off. Well, I just happened to work with the group Lone Star. And I started up a conversation with them about writing a song with them sometime because I love to write. I've had Brian McKnight produce some of my stuff, so I've done R&B writing and pop music. But I said, I love your guys' tunes. You never do a bad song. I said, it would be my dream to write with y'all. So Dean Sams, the founding member of Lone Star, invites me to come on out to Nashville. We wrote a song and we thought, wow, this is a hit. Anyways, they tied it up. And I thought they were going to record it until about 2 weeks later, their Lone Star lead singer, Richie McDonald, announced after 14 years as their lead singer, he was going to go solo and do gospel music. Well, I'm thinking, there goes my big opportunity unless I act on it. So I said, listen, Dean, if you're not going to record that song, do you mind if I do? And he says, why don't you just come to my house and I'll produce you? So Lone Star ends up producing my very first album, half of it. And then I took it down to Muscle Shoals, Alabama, and my buddy Gary Baker, who wrote the song I Swear, and I'm Already There for Lone Star and other big hits. He produced the rest of the album. We released it on Pretty World Records, and one after the other, we had 4 consecutive #1 hit singles. So that got my big size 16 boots in the door, and I was like, all right, let's go have some fun. And so we have. And the thing is that, during COVID, a lot of things shut down, and so I kind of had to hang up the cowboy hat for a while. And I've been doing a lot of things in business and started a bunch of new things we can talk about too. But the thing is that my passion has always been in entertainment, music. I have a production company. I love to produce new artists as well, and music videos and other things like that, not just for myself, but for others now, which is a lot of fun, to be able to continue on and carry on my production behind the scenes, helping others as well.
Sure. And that seems to be what most great songwriters do. We've seen that back in the early 60s when John Lennon had written some hits as well. Paul McCartney did the very same thing. This is in the latter years. This is
Oh,
surrounding
yeah.
the end times for the Beatles, but not for Apple Records. And
Sure.
even George Harrison, as great of a lyricist that he was,
Hmm.
said, "No one's gonna do my music. I'm gonna write my own." I'm a huge Beatles guy, so that's my
Yeah,
correlation. So
I
we talk
love
about
that.
writing. It really it is so difficult. I mean, it's difficult for those that have never done it, but it's really easy for those that have a knack for it, that
Mhm.
really have spent their time and effort and energy. But for you to have multiple #1 hits, that's amazing. I mean, that really is a pure testament to the
Well,
message you're trying to send to those demographics, to those people listening to various audiences across genres. So it really doesn't pinhole you into one perspective. It opens up other doors as well.
yeah, my father told me this. He says, son, we wrote #1 hits in the 70s because nobody told us we couldn't. So we just did. And so he's a great songwriter. I grew up around a great songwriter, Alan Osmond, who wrote most of the #1 hits for the Osmonds. In fact, one of the songs he wrote was called Down by the Lazy River. And he says, son, the best songs aren't written, they're rewritten. And so he said, I love this one song called Jeremiah Was a Bullfrog, Joy to the World. You remember that song?
Yes.
And so he says, if you compare Joy to the World, with Down by the Lazy River, you're going to see the similarities because I took a song I loved and I wrote one just like it. And it felt familiar to people, and that's why they gravitated towards it. So he says, find a song that you love and write one just like it. Make it your own. Don't steal the melodies or still, the chords progressions, but there's only so many notes on the piano. So find something you like and then make it your own. And so he did that a lot. He wrote songs like Crazy Horses, which to this day, I've heard more rock stars, rave that was one of their favorite rock songs growing up. And people sometimes don't remember the rock side of the Osmonds, but we've had, like Def Leppard came to town and they're like, home of the Osmonds, you crazy horse. And they started singing Osmond songs. Like, what? How cool is that? If you listen, by the way, to the song called Hold Her Tight by the Osmonds, you will swear up and down that was Led Zeppelin.
I'll have to check that out. I can see the
Everybody
total art
hears
then.
the beginning and they think it's Led Zeppelin. Crazy thing is that the Osmonds Hold Her Tight song came out first. Zeppelin was actually in the same studio where they were recording that. It was identical to that. I'm not saying they stole it, but I'm just saying we're honored to be compared to Led Zeppelin because guess what? My dad and uncles used Zeppelin's sound systems during the 70s because they were known as one of the loudest rock bands of the 70s in Europe. People are like, no, I thought they were just Puppy Love, and Goody Two Shoe bubblegum pop. No, the Osmonds actually were this close to changing their name and going out as Gladiators. They were going to do the whole Kiss thing with makeup and masks and stuff.
Wow. Ahead of their time.
Anyways, Donnie, started taking off, and Marie, and they got this duo. So instead of worrying about who's out front, we always say it doesn't matter as long as it's an Osmond. And so they got behind their brother and sister, the duo, and that's why they've had all that success with television and everything else, because my father became more of a producer on the #1 most watched variety television show of all time, the Donnie and Marie Show. It's in the Guinness Book of World Records. They had a 60 share on the networks. That's like Super Bowl ratings every single week.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that? I mean, they only had 4 networks back then, but so that's the point, though. Everybody watched it. And I grew up on those shows.
Mm-hmm.
I was there with some of my favorite TV characters. I didn't know any different. I thought everybody had a studio, but
no, they're all shared.
That was my childhood. So that's kind of where I got the bug. And that's where I learned to perform and be in front of cameras and be comfortable, And so it was kind of natural for me to kind of follow in those footsteps because it's all I ever knew. And but then I started watching my father as a producer, as he produced live events. He went out and produced Ronald Reagan's, inauguration celebrations, all the fireworks shows. He flew out the Mormon Tabernacle Choir to sing the Battle Hymn of the Republic in front of the Lincoln Memorial for Nancy. And so he was really a great producer. He even did that for George H.W. Bush. But then he created a show called Stadium of Fire. And it's the largest 4th of July spectacular in a stadium in the nation. And every single year, I mean, this year they got the Jonas Brothers coming in, but I've performed there in front of 65,000 plus people, and on the Armed Force networks. But he started that. He's even in the Guinness Book of World Records for the most fireworks lit off at one time, 1,050,000 firecrackers in 6 seconds. Everyone thought they were dead. It felt like a nuclear bomb was going off in the BYU stadium. Because he laced it with black match. And if you know anything about black match, it's like zoom, it just flies. Because he didn't want 20 minutes of brrr, pop, pop, pop. He says, I want it hot, and I want it fast, and I want it exciting. He brought in the fire trucks. He says, turn on the lights. Guys, put your masks on. Get people excited, right? Anyway, nobody knew what was going to happen because they'd never been done before. 6 seconds of sheer terror. Fire, like everything in slow motion, like you see in the movies, and it was then over, and everyone was still alive, but it was so hot it started to melt the masks of the firefighters. It was that hot. It blew people off the stage. It was like crazy sheer terror, but everybody bought tickets the next year, and they have ever since. So that's my father. I grew up around a great producer, a great songwriter, and now I'm just trying to follow in his footsteps, doing it on my own now. So I love
You'd be doing a fabulous job of it, I must say, with all
you're nice. You're nice
right now.
I got some big shoes to follow, but it was fun to just kind of be around all that excitement in the 70s, 80s. And then, of course, we started taking off early 90s over in Europe with our top 40 hits. And our father was our manager. And, when I was 10, though, he was hit with something called multiple sclerosis, MS. And, it's been a crippling disease on his right side. And so it's been tough, but his attitude is incredible because every time that, like from day one, he says, I might have MS, but MS does not have me. And that's been his slogan. So we've learned a lot from our father about hard work. If you set your mind to something, you can do anything. I remember hearing the stories of how they went down to Hollywood and they bought a map of where the stars live. And they went down there and started to, just follow where the map led them to different people's houses. And they went and knocked on the door of the Lennon sisters that were on the Lawrence Welk show. And they actually let him in. You get arrested doing stuff like that nowadays, right?
Yeah.
But they said, hey, you should meet our boss, Lawrence Welk. So he was in town. They didn't really have an official meeting with them scheduled. So they go down there all dressed up for a hopeful audition that never happened. And then he's in the other room and he won't come out and even say hi to him. It just broke their hearts. So my grandmother sees their teary eyes and says, George, let's take him to Disneyland. Let's have some fun. Then we'll go home and live normal lives. Well, guess what? They go to Disneyland dressed up for an audition that never happened. And all of a sudden, the Dapper Dans, the quartet that sings on Main Street, barbershop quartet, spots this little family from Utah and says, "You guys look like a group." And they says, "Well, we are." "Well, sing us a song." They did. They were ready, and all these people started gathering around there on Main Street thinking it's part of the attraction. And they started singing back and forth. Anyways, that's how they made the connection with Andy Williams. Walt Disney gave them their first shot there in the park and put them on the stages. And that's how they led to being on the Andy Williams shows. Well, guess what? You had to be ready to perform. My father was 12 when he's the oldest of that performing group. And they became regulars when he was only 12 years old. Every week they had to have something new. If you didn't, you're off the show. So he says, "Can you guys play guitar?" Well, they learned, right? "Can you guys play saxophone?" Well, grandma knew, so she taught him that week. "Can you guys tap dance?" They learned. "Can you guys ice skate?" My grandpa said, "You bet they can." They thought he was crazy. They'd never been on skates in their lives. Well, guess what? They went down, rented skates, skated till they had blisters the size of silver dollars on the bottoms of their feet. Went in there and they nailed it. They got the nickname, the one take Osmonds, because they would come in every single week and nail it on the first take because of all the hours and hours of practicing and rehearsal. Anyways, that very next week, the Ice Capades called up the Osmonds and said, "We saw you on television. You guys are really good. You guys want to go on the road?" They'd never been on skates a week before that. So it's amazing what you can accomplish in life if you set your heart to it. If you have this can-do attitude. I might have MS, but MS does not have me. It didn't matter what the challenge was. My father knew he could do anything he set his mind to, including writing #1 hit songs. Isn't that amazing?
It's a pure testament to who he is, and I think that has a lot to do with his
Mm.
continued fight. And it you almost by default want to emulate what he has done,
Mhm.
emulate his personality, his demeanor, his attitude, the way he lives life on a daily basis. And I wanted to go back to something you were talking about earlier in regards to the 90s shift of country music, because
Yeah.
that's when things kind of changed in the sense of, what does it actually look like? What is country music going to evolve into? And I think the segue was really paid by guys like Colin Ray. It was paid by Garth Brooks, who's
Yes.
probably, to be honest with you, probably my favorite country
Mm-hmm.
artist. No
Mine too.
offenses, is my vinyl choice for any country music artist. I actually have that on a 33 and a third. And
Oh yeah.
there's so many different shows that kind of go a little bit further backwards in the 70s that I remember watching, everything related to uh Good Times, and you had the Schoolhouse Rock, and you had a variety of things that kind of, it was a nation in change, and it was almost to where we were kind of evolving, not quite sure what that was going to look like, but we were evolving into a society of almost like a revisit of what the Roaring Twenties was like musically from an entertainment capacity
Country
as
change.
well. Yeah,
Because I
almost
told
like a
myself I'll never
revival.
like the twang. Well, I lied. I'm a big fan of the old stuff too now, but I wasn't always. I grew up listening to my father and uncles because they shifted gears from the rock days and the pop days and the disco days into a country group. Just the three brothers, or the four brothers actually. Originally, it was the four brothers. The original group became a country group in the '80s, and they had major hits. They were on CMA awards and all sorts of stuff. And so we grew up listening to some of their country stuff. Now I have to give them credit too for converting me to country, but I told myself I'd never like country. I lied. It wasn't until, and I told Garth Brooks this story. When we sat down, he and Trisha Yearwood and I were sitting together, and I said, "Guys, this is so crazy to be here hanging out with y'all because I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing if it hadn't been for your career and for my cousin Travis, who's a real hick, who took me back at the Osmond Family Theater in the '90s, early '90s, and he hopped it. He said, 'Nate, come with me.' We sat in his pickup truck, a white Ford F-150, and he pops in this cassette, and he says, 'Now you listen to this guy. His name's Garth.' And Thunder Rolls came on, and I was hooked. I told that to Garth. He just lit up. I said, I was hooked on it. You got me hooked on country. And so I told him, the biggest compliment I'm ever given when I do a show is like, "You remind me of Garth Brooks." It says, "Well, it's because I'm trying to be him." You know, he's like my hero. Thank you for the compliment. But number two, my uncle says, "You look like Garth Brooks." And I'm like, come on. And so I told Garth, now don't get a restraining order. And I'm going to show you something here on your show that I showed to him. I said I got in this this photo shoot one time, and I was really trying to channel my inner Garth. And so I did one that was very similar to a photo shoot you did. Then I played around with Photoshop and I created what I call Garth Osmond. I showed this to him. Look at this. Garth, I
Oh,
took half his
wow.
face and half my face.
Doppelganger. That's a
That's what
doppelganger right
that's
there.
what Trisha says. She grabbed my phone. She says, "You found your doppelganger, Garth." Anyways, you guys got to see this. If you watch this show, that's Garth Osmond right there.
That
Anyways,
is
just laughs. We just had the best time. But it's fun to get to work with the people that have inspired you along the way, and to give Garth Brooks Nathan Osmond CD, and to think this exists because of what you inspired within me. And so I want to thank you for being a great shining example. And I just hope to be able to create great music like you have, and to touch hearts and touch lives. That who knows if there's future country singers that will hear a Nathan Osmond album someday and go, you know what, I want to do that. I want to follow in his footsteps, and do those things. You never know who you're inspiring or influencing out there, but you do it because you love it.
Yeah.
You do it because you want to make a difference in the world, and you got to pick and choose the right songs. That's what Garth did so well, is he got the right players, the right songwriters, and he even bought 1 million copies of his own album, because you know what? That made him a million seller. Isn't that incredible? Like you got to be creative in this business. And people said, "No way, who's this new guy? He just sold 1 million records. That's Garth Brooks." Well, they didn't know he bought his own album. If you're not willing to buy your own stuff, why should anybody else?
That's
So
right.
anyway, I just love that he did that. It's fun to hear, Taylor Swift's story and what she did to get into country music. And she's a great businesswoman too. Got a lot of talent, and I love that she took ownership of her stuff and didn't allow a label to ruin her and take advantage of her, because that happens so frequently in this business. You got to understand the business side of this business, I've been taught. And so I've really gotten into business, and learned a lot along the way. And I'm grateful for the mentors that watched out for us to help us avoid a lot of the pits. Nowadays, the days of the major labels are over. Everyone's going indie. Right? They have these 360 deals with these big labels, and they want to own you. They want to own not only your music, but your ticket sales, your merch, your website, everything that you do, the clothes you wear, the clothes you don't wear, and your whole image. So I just do it. I'm actually in between labels because I decided that I wanted to go a different direction. And so I am still writing, still putting out music. I just started a movie called Even in Dreams, where I played myself. I mean, how cool is that, to play yourself in a film? And what a compliment to be cast as Nathan Osmond, the country singer, in a movie called Even in Dreams. And I just thought that was so neat. And then I'm in a new movie that's coming out this year called Buster Brooks, and again was cast as myself. So I'm like, I guess I'm not that good of an actor, because they just cast me to play me.
Well, maybe that is a staple.
Hey.
That is the way. And I hate to,
I guess I'm just a character. I don't know.
you're just who you are, and then that's one of the reasons why they want you to play yourself. Because if you're not being yourself, then you're not being true to yourself, and you're not being
Well,
true to the audience that's watching. That's
I appreciate that compliment. I always try and tell my kids that is just be who you are. Don't try to be your dad. Don't try to be anyone else you see on TikTok or on Facebook or Instagram. Be uniquely you, because that's what stands out.
right.
Everybody's looking for originality. Well, there's nothing more original than you.
That's right.
So you can be inspired and influenced, just like we talked about with music, but in the long run, make sure you're being true to yourself and be true to your fans. We have the most loyal fans, and it's just so cool that the Osmond star on the Walk of Fame was one of 2 stars out of that whole Walk of Fame that was actually purchased by the fans of the artist. Liza Minnelli was the first one, and then the Osmond family. We were there, and I got to thank Mr. Andy Williams for all that he did, to help my father and uncles get launched. They sold over 100 million records. They were known as the White Jackson Five. They're known as the original boy band. And that's my dad, and my uncles. And I'm so proud of the legacy that they've created, and for the support that so many people around the world have shown our family. I'm grateful to continue on that name. I almost didn't use Osmond. I asked Donnie and Marie, I said, should I go out as Nathan Osmond? And Marie said, no, people are going to prejudge it and this and that. And so anyway, she's since changed her tune. because Donnie, I went to him and he says, listen, people go on America's Got Talent, American Idol, The Voice, because they want to have some instant street cred. They want to be, associated with a brand that's big and important and famous. Well, guess what? You've already got something built in. It's called Osmond. Now, don't abuse it. Don't, let it be a layer in the cake. It's going to come out eventually, but let it get a foot in the door. And then you've got to have the goods. You've also got to have thick skin, because people in this business, not everybody's going to like you, Nathan.
Yeah.
And you have to be okay with that. And that's the hardest thing as an entertainer, because we're always trying to win everybody over, right? With our shows and our productions, but not everybody is going to like you, and you have to be okay with that. So I had some good counsel as I got into this. Anyways, especially with country music, one thing I love is that we're proud of our roots. We're proud of where we came from, right? And so all I've talked about most of the show is my father. And so I'm grateful for the legacy that they've created, and grateful that I can hopefully carry on that tradition, with what I do day in and day out, whether that be in music or the music business or in real estate and mortgages. I got osmondhomeloans.com for those that are, because I had to get creative when the whole entertainment world shut down. I don't sit around. I create opportunities. So during the refi boom, I've taught real estate throughout the years. I've been on stage from everybody with Donald Trump to Tony Robbins to George Foreman, doing all these big rah-rah financial conferences as an MC. That's how I got into motivational speaking. That's how I got into, creating my own podcast, Achieving Awesomeness Now, which is now also heard on the radio. We're on Brushwood Media Network every single day, 12:30 and 4:30 p.m. Eastern. I've got my own national radio show now because my father worked with me. He coached me. I used to be really, really shy, but he helped me get over that real fast because he was a great coach.
Now, sometimes it takes greatness to help us understand and facilitate what the
Mm-hmm.
rest of our lives will actually look like. As a matter of fact, CMA said America and country music fans are about to see a new chapter in the Osmond legacy. And I agree. I had a chance to listen to some of your stuff, whether it's motivational speaking or music in general. I'm a fan. It was
Thank you.
instant, not quite fandom, but I'm almost there. Just give me a little bit,
I
give me a
love
few
it,
more minutes,
man.
and I
Well,
and I can
maybe we'll
actually do
convert
that.
you
I it's
to
always
Osmond
for the
land here.
good, always for the good. And then obviously, you have the one of the largest names in news talk, and of course, I produce. No, I don't. I produce and do voiceovers for iHeartRadio, and I talk news all the time. So, if a guy named Larry King comes knocking and he sends you a quote that says Nathan Osmond is a wonderful talent whose musical genes shine brightly through, that says a lot because he's been around for a long,
Oh,
long
we
time.
miss Larry. Larry is a good friend, and my brother actually even lived in his house. Then his house, by the way, is the house from Night at the Roxbury, where that house party is. That was Larry King's house in Bel Air. Isn't that incredible? So my
Wow.
brother lived there. I remember one night being there playing the piano and singing with his wife around the piano, and he comes walking in with like his wife beater and his boxer shorts, and Larry King says, "Good night." I mean, who gets to see that? That was like classic Larry, but we've had some fun getting to know people in this industry. And just, I'm so grateful for that testimonial because, he really was a legend, and just so fun to get to work with people. And like I said, hopefully inspiring the new generation coming up, because country music has changed. I think we've lost a lot of the country, and I'd like to get us back to our roots a little bit more. But I got to record with Jack Green, the very first ever CMA award winner. And in fact, he won more CMAs that very first CMA that even Loretta Lynn said if he'd been wearing a skirt that night, he would have taken them all home. But he's in my music video, the Tailgate song. I recorded my third #1 hit with him, replacing Vince Gill's vocals on that recording with him because Vince had already had a new album coming out. So here I got to replace Vince. I had Colin Ray on my new album, got to hang with Garth. All these guys that inspired me along the way now are my friends. So if you have something in your heart and you have the guts to go after it, you can do so many amazing things. My grandmother, who created the Children's Miracle Network, she is the founding person of that whole charity that's raised over $7 billion for children's hospitals. On her deathbed, said to my father, Alan, there is no limit to the good we can do if we don't care who gets the credit. And that's how she lived her life. So it's not about me. It's about the music. It's about the production. It's about the lives that are going to be affected and changed. and the people that we're going to inspire along the way. That's why we do what we do. And I'm just so grateful, Rudy, to be invited on your show to just hopefully introduce more people to it. So if they want to find out more, then go to nathanosmond.com. That's my official website. You can follow me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. You can go to Osmond Home Loans on there. You know, see all the stuff that we're doing. But go listen to our podcast. And thank you for listening to Rudy's show, you guys. What an awesome guy. I'm so grateful to be on here.
Thank you so much, Nathan. I appreciate it. You took the words right out of my mouth. You can go to achievingAwesomenessNow.libsyn.com if you want to listen to the podcast version and find it on whatever radio station is in your neck of the woods.
iHeart, we're on Apple Podcasts. Go to nathanosmond.com. You can just listen to it when you click podcast.
Fabulous. Again, nathanosmond.com. Go find him on LinkedIn as well. I think everybody has a LinkedIn account. Nathan, so much. It's been a pleasure. Would love to have you back on again to hear about all the amazing things you have going on, in addition to some new stuff, and maybe go dwell on some of the old stuff, because we know that we can't have a future if we don't understand the past. This is Rudy Reyes on the RudeDogShow.com. Nathan Osmond joins me. Nathan, thank you again.
Thank you.
Talk soon. Take care.
See you soon, brother.
So much.